So today is the day in which there's a deadline that Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson, the executives at Ripple, have to answer some questions and respond to the SEC's original amended complaint. So I'm going to talk about what that time frame means, what's going to happen next in the case, what the SEC and Ripple are supposed to be discussing, and why we're just getting to the good stuff. I'm also going to talk about what Jeremy Hogan says, what to expect in terms of what the SEC is going to try to do in terms of playing ball, and what Ripple is or isn't going to do. Also, some big news out of the Bitcoin conference down in Miami, as Jack Mallers, the creator of StrikeApp, had a major announcement that is sending what some people are calling shockwaves throughout the cryptocurrency world. Now, I don't know if it's that big, but it's definitely a huge piece of major public adoption of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as it's used in transactions. So I'm going to tell you about this big announcement that he just said and what it means for people being able to use Bitcoin to shop. Also, at that same Bitcoin conference, Peter Thiel, who's the billionaire investor and venture capitalist, had some choice words for some of the richest investors in the world. So I'm going to tell you what some of these thoughts are about Warren Buffett, Jamie Dimon, and some others that he calls an enemies list. Hey everyone, my name is Randy. Welcome back to the Late Night Grind. And right now on this channel, we're covering the Ripple versus the SEC case, but I'm also covering cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any or all these topics interest you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Late Night Grind community. Also, if you're feeling generous, I'd appreciate it. If you do, three things: smash the thumbs up button, watch the video to the end, and check out my Patreon in the link in the description below. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, let's jump into it. All right, so first I want to talk about what Jack Mallers announced just yesterday at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, announcing what StrikeApp is now doing, the partnerships that they just formed, that some people are, in my opinion, maybe going a little bit overboard in saying that Jack Mallers just made Bitcoin legal tender globally. Okay, so what actually happened? So the StrikeApp is an app where you can use to send Bitcoin from one person to another, and it's extremely cheap, fast. It doesn't rely on being a layer. It doesn't rely on Bitcoin's layer 1 blockchain, which is extremely slow for transaction times. So the StrikeApp is actually built on the Lengthening network, which is a layer on top of the Bitcoin network, which is what makes it faster and cheaper than strictly using the blockchain. So what they did was formed partnerships with some of the biggest point of sale companies in the world. So if you have the StrikeApp, you can now transact Bitcoin for shopping in what some people are now calling the no KYC off-ramps all over the world, which means you don't have to exchange Bitcoin for dollars in a centralized exchange where they know your identity and then do your purchasing. The StrikeApp and these partnerships are now making it possible for you to transact and buy anything on anybody that uses a Shopify store online, or for any retailer that uses the Blackhawk payment systems, or one of the biggest point of sale systems in the world, NCR. And all of those companies combined literally service millions of businesses around the world, including some of the largest, some of the ones like Giant, Publix, Wawa, Chick-fil-A, and literally thousands of the biggest brand name stores that you can imagine. You can now take your StrikeApp and pay for products with Bitcoin. Now, how does it work? Well, I'm not going to go into a lot of technicals, but basically you can choose how you want to pay. You can pay through USD, you can pay through Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. And when you make that payment at the store or online, it will actually transact your Bitcoin and exchange it for US dollars or whatever fiat currency that retailer wants to accept, and exchange it right before the transaction so that the retailer will actually get all of that USD. What does this do? Well, there's a couple of things, there's a couple reasons why this is actually very big for the cryptocurrency world. Because like I said, you have the no KYC off-ramps now available, and it allows retailers to actually accept money without paying Visa and MasterCard fees. That's huge because depending on what type of company you are, you're paying anywhere from 1.5% to 3% fees to Visa and MasterCard. That's gone. Now, depending on how big your company is, that could literally be hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year paid to Visa and MasterCard. No comment yet from Visa or MasterCard. This is a very newsworthy event that just took place because it's things like this that are going to push mass adoption of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency spending and transactions out in the real world. This is what a lot of people have been waiting for to actually go, well, what's Bitcoin used for other than maybe just an investment? This. So now what else went on down in Miami? Well, Peter Thiel, who is a billionaire investor and venture capitalist, he was actually speaking at the Bitcoin conference, and he made some interesting comments about some very wealthy gentlemen. Some by the name of Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan, as well as Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, and also Warren Buffett, the billionaire investor. And some of the things he had to say about him were very interesting, mainly because those three haven't exactly been very bullish on Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies since they became a thing. In fact, he called Warren Buffett the sociopathic grandpa from Omaha. And not only that, he called out Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink for not exactly thinking too highly of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, at least from some of their comments he made in the past. So he called this his enemies list to, of course, a crowd of booing people on stage while he was making these comments. And we all know that Warren Buffett is not exactly a fan of cryptocurrency, but Peter Thiel went as far as to say these are the people that are essentially trying to block or shut down cryptocurrencies. Now, you might not remember this, but back in May of 2018, Warren Buffett was actually in an interview with Bill Gates, and they were asking, and the interviewer was asking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and they basically just laughed it off. In fact, Bill Gates famously said that if there was a way to short Bitcoin, he would. Well, guess what? You can now short Bitcoin. And if he would have shorted Bitcoin on that day, when Bitcoin was worth about $9,600, well, he would have been wrecked. And quite honestly, that would have been really, really fun to see. All right, so now let's talk about the Ripple versus the SEC case, because today is actually a big day. Today is a deadline in which we're expecting a couple of things. Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larsen, the executives at Ripple, are expected to have a whole bunch of answers for the SEC that answered a bunch of questions from the SEC's original lawsuit, the original amended complaint way back in December. Actually, the amended complaint came in January of 2021. So this does a couple of things. Once those answers are submitted, that starts, number one, a 1-week deadline for the SEC that has to respond to the judge, letting the judge know if there's any more discovery that needs to be done. I don't know why they get that option, because they're basically going to delay and do everything in their power to delay. And if that's one thing that they're going to do, they're going to do it. The other thing after that is that sets up a time frame where both Ripple and the SEC have to meet and confer on a deadline. Now, this is where it gets interesting. They have to meet and confer on some timelines about briefings for summary judgments. That's where the interesting thing for me really comes into play, because the summary judgment, this is where the judge could actually decide one way or the other, and so they're supposed to meet and talk about timeframes. However, Jeremy Hogan, who is our favorite outside attorney covering this case, has said, listen, this is one of those things where if the SEC gets a chance to delay, they're probably going to take that option, simply because they've done that every step of the way, so why would they do anything different? And I completely agree, so you might have to be looking for more delays as we go along. The other part of that deadline today is that today's the day the SEC is supposed to submit those different notes to the judge, all the redactions that they want to make. The judge is actually going to get to see it, everything unredacted, of course, but the SEC, they want to hide a couple of things. And there's a few things that, of course, we're still waiting on, that being the decision of reconsideration from the judge on the Hinman emails, also the DPP, also the Esterbrook notes, also the redactions that are supposed to be given, the redactions that are supposed to be given to the judge today. So there's a bunch of things coming up that we are waiting on, and honestly, I can't wait to see what some of the interesting information comes out when they start talking about briefings for summary judgment, because now I think you're going to start to see some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the end of this case, possibly a time frame. And there comes the settlement talks once again. So if you want to stay up to date with all of that, along with all these other stories that I cover on this channel, don't forget to subscribe to the Late Night Grind community. Don't forget to smash that thumbs up button. And thank you once again for watching this video all the way to the end. And once again, if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my Patreon. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.